All right, hello, welcome everyone to Phoenixville Library, those of you in the room and those of you on Zoom, to tonight's presentation, part of our ongoing Community Gardening Around the Village series, sponsored by Communities That Care and a host of Phoenixville area environmental and gardening organizations. Tonight we have Seed Starting Made Simple, and our presenter is Susan Doblmaier. She's the Seed Exchange Chairperson with the Mid-Atlantic group of the Hardy Plant Society. So those of you on Zoom, if you have questions during Susan's presentation, you are welcome to type them into the chat and I will relay them to her. Those of you in the room can interrupt her during the presentation, and then at the end everybody will have a chance to chime in either by unmuting or typing in the chat if you are on Zoom. With that, we welcome Susan. Take it away.
Yeah, it's easier to address, thank you. It's easier to address people as I'm going along sometimes, but you know, you can always ask questions at the end too. Yes, I'm Susan. I'm also a Montgomery County Master Gardener, that's why it says it there. But tonight my role is Seed Exchange Chairperson of the Hardy Plant Society Mid-Atlantic group. We just finished our seed exchange last week. I just mailed out all the 123 orders today. That was a lot of money, unfortunately. But, you know, it is fun and I love seeds, so, you know, this is a great program. Let me just get this going. Of course, I use my mouse, but that's okay. There we go. There we go. Oh, good. Why do we start from seed? Who's grown from seed? Good. More varieties, because you can find a lot in the some garden centers, box stores, catalogs, everything. So you have a lot of varieties to choose from besides what you can buy as plants in your box stores, garden centers, etc. For instance, these are a few of the plants that I grow continuously. A lot of the top left ones are available. That is an ornamental pepper called Black Pearl, I believe. I just like the ornamental quality of it. It is a hot pepper, and you will, and you can eat the peppers, but it is hot. The bottom left is a castor bean. I'm trying to remember the common names really well. I can get the Latin really well. Is a castor bean. Yes, it is a nasty plant. That is, all parts of the plant are poisonous. It's just, I use it for the center of a lot of my containers, and I think it's very attractive besides that grass that everybody grows. So I just use that. Like I said, all parts of the plant are poisonous, and castor bean, yes, that's where castor oil came from. The one on the right is a South African foxglove, is its common name. Ceratotheca is the Latin name. It's a very pretty plant. And yes, I can only grow it from seed. So, you know, there are just some things that way. It's very difficult to find. You're finding a lot of the ornamental peppers available as plants now in nurseries. You can grow your own heirloom varieties if that's important to you, because they have great taste, you know, especially the vegetables. Tell me if I need to speak up. I know my voice doesn't carry a lot. Thank goodness there's only 5 or 6 of you in the room. So, you know, some of those tomatoes, those heirloom varieties are wonderful. Of course, they may not have the disease resistance of some of the newer hybrids that show up. And they are just a short different varieties of heirloom plants, or vegetables, I should say. So you can grow your own organic produce. You can decide how organic you want it.
Thank you.
Some people, that's the importance of growing their own vegetables and fruits. It's fun to do with kids or grandkids, depending on your age. And over time, it can be less expensive. I am going to show you the cheapest way possible to grow without a lot of added equipment. Do I have the equipment now? Yes, but I didn't at first. So it's, you know, a process, because purchasing that plant stand can be very expensive, purchasing all the lights can be expensive, Do you need them? No, but, you know, I've just graduated at this point. It's been probably 30 years since I started, so, you know, I bought things gradually. And then it's always fun to see your own vegetable and flowers come up from seed. It really is. That's still the excitement for me at this point, just seeing those little plants come up. So a little bit of biology, sorry, but this is a little bit of important. We're going to focus on the top one. That is a bean plant. And that one is most of our plants in the gardening world, because they have two leaves. So usually they're either opposite or alternate, and we see two leaves. The corn, you do see a few plants like that. Grass is another one that's very common, so that's one leaf at a time that comes out. The two-leaf plants, they all do the same thing, they just have different names. So let's go from the top to the bottom, and I'll show you on the plant too. I actually have a picture of the plant. So the testa on the top is just your seed coat. That's all it is. The plumule is your first leaves will come from there. The radicle is your root. So this is all in a seed. You don't see it unless you really can cut into it. Excuse me, I have a picture of that in a minute. The hilum is the attachment point to the pod, in this case for a bean. The micropyle is where water will get through. Yeah, I'm losing my voice for some reason. So there is a very tiny opening. It's very difficult to see on any seed, and the bean is probably the largest that you can cut into. The cotyledon is all the food source for that seed. So initially, you do not need to feed your plants. Everything is in the seed. Even this one, it's called endosperm. So this is the bean seed. Like I said, you can see the seed coat on the outside. You can see the plumule, and you can the radicle will be there, off to the left a little bit. It's a little bit difficult to see in this picture, but they're great. And then you can see all the cotyledons. So like I said, you do not have to feed any seed initially. So your potting soil does not need food initially. You can use potting soil or seed starting mix, and we'll get into that too. I'll go through, you know, step by step. So if you have any questions, let me know. But bean seed is the fun one to do with kids, because within a week, you will have a plant. If you started day 1, day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you basically have a plant in 8 days, and the kids love that because every day something's happening to that seed. Yes.
It starts once water goes in the.
Yes. Yes. So, there's a few requirements needed. Water is one, maybe a little bit of heat, depending on the seed. Bean seed, you really don't need that much heat. But yeah, it's pretty much the water will make that seed expand a little bit so that everything can come out and the seed coat breaks. So sometimes you might, like for trees and shrubs, if you ever saw the seeds of those, they are very hard. So a lot of times when you have to germinate those, you have to scarify them, basically, sandpaper, either cutting into it so that water can get in there, because it would take quite a while. Mother Nature does it on its own, outside. So the frost and heat cycles that we've had a lot more frost than heat lately. Now we're finally getting some heat. That actually does it too. So that's why a lot of your perennials will be seed somewhere, because that's what they do. So some of the equipment that we need, I'm not going to show you, real specifics all the time. I mean, some of these have names on them, some of them don't. I'm not promoting any one product. Seed starting soil would be nice, but a potting mix would work too. Seed starting mix is just a little bit lighter than a potting soil, that's all. Seeds, of course, and some kind of plant label. That's pretty much, the basics. So those things I would purchase unless you have some soil at home. Soil can last a little while. 10 years, no. Maybe 2 or 3 years, yes. In my house, soil goes really quick. So I couldn't tell you. I mean, it lasts a year. I buy some and it can last a year sometimes. Some of the containers you can grow in. Yes, those peat, on the top left, those peat mix things, they work. It's just, I found they just don't work for me. Because when you water from the bottom all the time, they get too wet and they will start to break apart. That's what they're supposed to do. But if you're putting a tomato or pepper in there and having it start in your house for about 6 to 8 weeks or more, then over time that's just going to become a big mess. So I like the plastic systems at this point. Unfortunately, at this, I know there are some plastic ones, but the amount of seed starting I do, I usually have about 20 to 30 flats eventually. So yes, I am doing a lot of seed starting. I've already started some things. I already have 1 flat done. And I keep going. Next week I'll start something else. That's what happens. Some of the bought ones are good. The Jiffy pots aren't bad if you're not using them long term again. That is also something that is supposed to break down. Plastic containers like yogurt containers, butter containers, and all that will work very well as long as you have drainage holes in the bottom. So they can work. Even things like those paper cups, I hate to use brand names, but the Dixie type cups, or the store brand, whatever it may be, those will work as long as they have drainage holes. And they work very well. You can find a lot of those things at the dollar store these days and use them instead of, purchasing whole systems. And then those block makers, the pots out of newspapers, they'll work, but over time they will break down really quick too, especially when you're watering a lot. So they can work, it will be a big mess.
That plastic, you can buy the stuff that already has dirt in it?
You can, yeah, they have that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you recommend that, or does it work okay?
It works fine.
Okay. I have some from last year.
Why not? Use what you have sometimes instead of always buying new stuff. Right now, I have a system like that that'll eventually, turn into something similar to the bottom left. And, I just clean it every year, and then I just keep reusing it. But, I don't want you to have to spend a lot of money. And you see on these things, these are all optional. If you have them, great. If you don't, there's no need to purchase them, and I will show you other options too. A seed germination mat is really nice, to warm up, especially peppers. Peppers are the worst to germinate because they really like heat. And you notice that even in the summer. They won't really grow until we get enough heat around. Yeah. So, I know, it is nice, but not necessary. Because you can actually use a heating pad if you can control the temperature, because the heat mats it's about between 70 and 75 degrees. So if you can control the temperature on a heating pad, that would be a way, if you have that would be another option. And the other option is, if your freezer is on the top of your refrigerator, I know not everyone's that way these days. My freezer's on the bottom at this point. But when my freezer was on the top, I could actually use the top of my refrigerator to put them on to warm up because your heating element's on the top. So it's actually warmer up there with all the heating elements. So it did work, and I've used that too. So just giving you options. Yeah, the seedling growing systems are great too. But again, it is an expense. I don't even know what they're going for now because I have these things over time. A seed starting stand again would be great, and I did have one that a friend gave me a long time ago, and he'll probably show up in one of my pictures. And really nice too. I'm just really fortunate now. I've even expanded. I have my own greenhouse now, so. But that was, that's been 8 years ago. We put the greenhouse around. It's 16 by 18, and it keeps me sane in the winter because I would have sad disease. So, lights, you can just purchase shop lights at your box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever. Inexpensive way to make it with some PVC piping. Works well if you really want to get into the light system. It's really your choice. The other thing that works, and I've seen this a lot, there's a lot of DIY stuff online. Those are old Christmas lights, so they used them as a heating mat. They raised them up a little bit because they do generate some heat, just like any of your lights will. So any of the holiday lights will. So I've seen a lot of DIY stuff online.
Do you leave them on all day?
I always leave my heating mat on constantly. The minimum my greenhouse gets is 50 degrees. That's something we've built into it. I mean, we have to work at it, but we've built it in. And so the heat only comes on when it gets below that. So, but I still keep my heating mat on out there. I have a single one and I have a double one that I purchased, I don't know how many years ago, but like, I found it 75% off about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, so. You know, trying to find sales here and there. It's always good, but they're not as good as they used to be, unfortunately.
What is?
I know. So, the one thing I do like to get most years is new seed. Do I have to? No, I have a lot of seed. And I'll show you where I store it eventually too. So, seed packets, that's the important thing, you know, if you don't have certain seeds. There are, I do have germination rates, because a lot of vegetables and fruits have germination rates available online. So things like onions, garlic, leeks. Yes, my accent is New England. I grew up in Rhode Island, and unfortunately I go there every few months.
We
So
can tell.
it's not going to change. Thank you very much. And so those things, they say after a year you should throw them out. It's just that the germination rates of your seeds are always going to go down. So the first year, by law technically, all seeds have to germinate, have to have certain germination rates. And I know the germination rates for peppers, tomatoes, it should be 80%. So any seed company selling you seeds should have a germination rate of peppers and tomatoes specifically at 80%. If they don't, then they will say germination did not, you know, meet our standards, and you may not get those seeds that year. Usually they're pretty good, but occasionally you do see that in catalogs where they'll cross out a plant and say it's not available because of that reason. Or crop failure, they'll throw crop failure on it a lot of times. So you do see in the front, you know, has the name, has the packed by, and that one says 2020, and it should be sold until the end of 2020. Will the peas still germinate? Sure, but that's been 5 years. So if you think about it, the germination rate may be down to 60% now, or even 50%. I don't know. I really don't. It depends on how you're storing these, and I'll show you that in a minute too. So all plants have that, you know. Dates that they're packed for, when they should be used by. Do you throw them away? You never throw a seed away. That's sacrilege to me. But, you know, the seed pack should tell you how to sow your seeds and when the right time is to sow your seeds. I'm going to give you generalizations for probably tomatoes, and I can give you a little bit on peppers. You just have to look at the back of the seed packets. Like this parsley says 6 to 8 weeks before your average last frost date. And we'll get to what that date is too, so that you can kind of work backwards to see when you should be planting. And yeah, I use a whole bunch of different seed companies. Just, you know, showing you, yeah, some of them are better than others at describing how you should stock them. This company, probably online they're telling you, or they give you instructions when they mail it, because this is an online company that I use a lot, because they only give me about 20 seeds at a time, or, you know, 10 or 20 seeds of tomatoes and peppers. I don't need 100 or 50, unless I'm growing for a community garden. If I'm just growing for myself, then 10 or 20 is fine. Lettuces, you're always gonna get 100 to 200 seeds, it doesn't matter. But for tomatoes and things where I know the germination rate will go down over time, 10 or 20 seeds is fine for me for 3 years. So this is what I was talking about, the life expectancy of your vegetables and fruits. So as you can see, like I was talking about before, onions, parsley, parsnips, they're definitely the onion family. They say after 1 year, your seed is, the germination rate is really poor. I would go down to about, 40, 50% sometimes. I've used parsley for about 5 years and had no problems. You just have to sow your seed a little bit heavier.
How about flowers, like zinnias?
They do have some of those online, but because a lot of these extension services and universities are really focused on the foods we eat.
Okay.
So there are some, and, they are a little bit difficult to find. Some of the flowers, things like Clear Creek Seeds, they did have a good seed info tab. And you could figure that out, but they're not gonna have every flower available, unfortunately. They're really focused on fruits and vegetables and, what we eat at this point. So when I say, tomatoes, tomatoes we get 4 years, 4 years for seeds. Yeah, your germination will go down. So the first year it's 80%, the next year might be 70, the final year maybe 60, who knows? It depends also how you're storing these. If you don't know what your germination rate is, you can always do a germination test. Yes, this is not scientific at all. Germination testing. Basically, I get a moist paper towel, put about 10 seeds on if you really want to get, percentages correctly. Put it in a, just moisten it, put your 10 seeds on, put it in a plastic bag, and check it daily, every other day if you'd like, and see which ones come up. Now I know I would save every one of those seeds that came up, so it's okay. And I would put them in soil. Because if they're going to grow, it's fine. If you're gonna leave them for weeks at a time in that type of system, they might not be great seeds to begin with, even though they might germinate just because you've left them in that plastic bag for about 2 weeks. But if you're only doing it for a few days at a time and opening and closing that bag and letting air in, then that's a good thing. But yeah, I would try to save as many as I could. I hate wasting. I really hate wasting. So usually planting of cool season crops, and I'll get into what those are too. Those are mostly your peas, broccoli, cabbage, those type of things. Best time is usually April 1st, just to make sure we've gotten rid of the cold. I know Farmer's Almanac will say March 17th in this area, but still if we wait a few more weeks, it's okay. It really is. Is that plant that started March 17th going to be any better than the one? They may get a few extra days depending on our weather. Who knows at this point? Our winter was terrible. Who knows what spring will bring us? So the last average spring frost date in this area has been changed to April 25th. It used to be beginning of May. Now we're down to April 25th. So that's the last time we could have a spring frost in this area. So technically, yes, you could plant out a lot of your warm season crops after that. Technically. Penn State's recommendation, though, is still the middle of May for most of your warm season vegetables and annuals. So if we were looking backwards on when to start a tomato plant, for instance, then you would be looking 6 to 8 weeks plus hardening off time. Don't forget to harden off your plants, and I'll discuss that too. So if the hardening off date is May 5th, because we're going, 10 days prior to May 15th, if you really want to put it out May 15th, I always wait until the following week to plant out everything. I can. So but even though, for that reason, I may be giving away plants, so I may be still following this method. So your hardening off date is May 5th. So you could start the seeds 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how big you want those plants to be, anywhere between March 10th and March 24th. And I know Berkeley actually has a seed right now that they're selling in their catalog that you can actually plant in the ground, and they say on April 25th you could plant it. They say a week before your last spring date, plant a seed in the ground, and you'll get a plant that produces tomatoes or peppers. They only have a few varieties. They're expensive at this point because I think they're only available in their catalog. But that was a new thing for me this year. Okay, so some of the frost hardy crops we could start planting early April. Broccoli, cauliflower, beets, carrots, celery, and so on that list. Don't need to read them to you. And those are the ones that really like the cooler temperatures and do well. So what will happen eventually when it turns into June and mid-June and late June, they'll start to bolt. Some of them sooner than others, just because of their growing time. I grow lettuces all year long. I just grow lettuces in the summer in a container in the shade. Yes, they're still gonna bolt when it gets really hot out, eventually, but in the shade it's a little bit cooler. I just stopped buying lettuce at a certain point. That's also something I grow in my greenhouse continuously all winter. But those are the frost hardy crops. So those can be planted out April 1st. They could also be planted out mid-August again for a fall crop. So you can get 2 crops of those. A lot of them, it's easier to grow some by plant. So things like cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, just looking. Celery, you might want to have little plants growing. Otherwise, seeds are fine of all those varieties. The ground will get warmer as we get closer to April, I hope. The warm season crops, the ones that should be planted out in mid-May, unless you have a raised bed or a container, they can always be planted out in those sooner because in a container you are adding new soil every year, which is warmer, and it'll be fine. Even a raised bed is a little bit warmer than just in the ground. So those can be planted out a little bit sooner that way. Otherwise, if you're planting them out in the ground, those are a lot of things that you're going to be starting from seed in the house initially. Maybe not the squash and watermelon, cantaloupe, and that type of thing. A pumpkin. Those can be started as seeds in the ground in the middle of May. Like I said, these are the best ones just to start the seeds as. I know a lot of people, start cucumber as a seed in the house, and yeah, you may have a 2-week head start, and a lot of us are getting cucumbers, but it's not a big deal for some people. Just throw the seed in the ground. So I did mention that scarification. You don't have a lot of these issues if you're just growing regular vegetables, regular annuals that they're selling at the box stores, the garden centers. I've started a lot of trees and shrubs and perennials that are difficult. And yes, you do have to sometimes, like I said, scarify it. Use a nail file, use some kind of, just to soften that seed coat. Sometimes you actually have to place it in water overnight. And I've done that too. Stratification, there's 2 types. There's the cold stratification. So that's basically over the winter for us. So a lot of our perennials just need some cold stratification, so they need that warm cold cycle. Some need fire to germinate. So you see the wildfires out west. And one of the, they're always, hopeful when they see first plants come back. And that's because a lot of those seeds out west, they really need fire in order to start germination. They will not germinate until you that. So that's why it's a good thing in the end. I mean, I know the wildfires are not good for, a lot of the people, but, you can be hopeful again seeing plants come back up. Because we all know weed seeds stay in our in our garden beds forever, in our lawns, they're everywhere. So the 3 items the seed needs to germinate. Water, I told you, you really need that micropile, that, opening in your seed. Some kind of light. You don't need a lighting system. For years, I just left my seeds. I had these nice little cots my mother-in-law had for years, and I just put them by a window. And every day I would rotate them because we know they'll go through phototropism, which is basically your plant leaning towards the light. Are your plants going to be really, really healthy? No, they're going to be a little bit elongated because they're always trying to reach for the light. But they're going to be healthy plants still. So it does work. So you do not have to buy a light system. Like I told you before, the top of the refrigerator, a heating pad that you can control the temperature between 70 and 75. The top of the refrigerator doesn't get that hot, but it's just warm enough for the seeds to start. And then, of course, if you want to, a heating pad.
Can they be in indirect sunlight, or it has to be direct?
It really doesn't matter because most of our windows, you're probably only getting maybe 70% of the light anyway at this point. 60 to 70, it depends on what windows you have, but most of them are about 60 or 70%. So you're not getting the full sun. So we're going to go through what I do, or what's recommended, I should say. Because sometimes I don't always do what's recommended to. Come on, really, we're gardeners. What do? We try different things. We don't always go by the rules. It's nice, but it's not necessary all the time. So I always make sure my pots and or containers are clean before. So you could use a bleach solution if you'd like, 1 pot bleach to 9 pots water. We'll just go with that. I add soil to almost fill the pots. In this instance, I have whatever that system is, 24, no, 36, I don't even know, I can't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. So 36 system. I have, 72 system too, so it depends on what type of seeds I want to put in there. I think the one on the left is actually the 72 system because that's actually 9 little pots in each. And I add it to almost fill the pots. Then I water from the bottom. So yeah, I'll take that pots out and put them in a container that can hold water and it stays in. Some of these break over time, so I have 2 together sometimes too. It's just plastic for each thing. I always water from the bottom, especially at first, because then you could dislodge your seeds. If you haven't put a seed in here yet, it's just a little bit easier, and you're making sure you're getting good watering in that whole bunch of soil that you have in there. Make sure it's halfway up the containers. It could take anywhere to 30, 60 minutes for the first time that you water. I will water this way until I repot my seedlings. Just because the seeds could dislodge, or that little seedling you get, depending on what you're growing, could just be wiped away if you tried to water from the top. Drain, I don't let it drain that much, but you could let it drain. Soil should be moist. Yeah, well, we change things. Depending on the size of the container, I will put anywhere from 1 to 4 containers in. So my tomatoes I'll actually start in what you buy at the nurseries or the box stores. The little, I think they're 4-inch containers. So I'll start them in there because I don't want to grow many tomatoes. And so I'll put 2 seeds or 3 seeds in there just to make sure I have a plant. If I have extra, well, I'll get to that. Only the soil just needs to be covered with soil. The seed just needs to be covered with soil. You do not have to go very deep with that seed because there is only enough of the food source that the seed has to make it above that soil level. So it just needs to be covered, that's it. So tomato seed, put it on the top and just gently push it down, that's about it. Pepper seed the same way. Larger seeds, yeah, you can go down a little bit farther, like the bean seed. Because like I said, plant too deep, big problem. Label the seeds. Whatever way you label, I do like plant labels a lot, but that's your choice. Some people like to put the date that they started them so that they know how long it should take. So, under ideal conditions, tomato seed should take less than a week to germinate. But that's with a heat map. They could take up to 2 weeks if you have it on the top of a refrigerator. You know, pepper seeds can take, for me, it's usually about a week and a half to germinate with a heating mat. But it could take up to 2.5 weeks if you're doing it on top of the refrigerator. So it just depends on your heat source and if they want to stop. So it's useful to know that, and on the back of the seed packets or on the instructions that a seed company, that a seed catalog will give you, they'll tell you how long these sticks should germinate. Everything's different. 12-week things out, things like begonias, fuchsias, you know, a lot of your long-term flowers. 8 to 10 weeks is peppers, eggplant, things like that, which should be started probably sometime in the next couple of weeks. Tomatoes and a lot of other stuff is 6 to 8 weeks. Again, that's going to be tomatoes. What else? I can't think right now. 4 weeks. And 2 weeks gets to be cucumbers, squash, pumpkins, that type of stuff. It's just a generalization, I know, at this point. So some people like to put the plant name. Yes, I throw it in Latin because I live in Latin in my head. And you can do it in common names, it's fine. This is just an impatient. You've seen these. This is one that does well in the shade. It will be a seed over time. So Belfiorii is just one. It doesn't look like your regular impatient. It's a little bit taller. It's about 1 foot tall. I don't have a picture of its size, but it's a great plant. What date started and when jade germination will occur. Some people like to put all that information on their seedlings. At this point, I don't. I just have the plant name, and I'm like, okay, I know I started this day, and when should it germinate by?
So when do you consider the end of germination? When you have a little sprout?
When I get the first set of leaves.
Of leaves, okay.
Yes, and we call them seed leaves, the first set of leaves. And I'll show you that too. So you can cover it with any type of plastic you like. Plastic bag, plastic wrap, plastic dome, whatever you have. Could also be a, yeah, just we'll go with some kind of plastic bag at this point. Doesn't matter. That's just going to create the humidity for you, and the seeds do like a little bit of humidity. Not a lot. I know there's, humidity levels, you can measure all that. It really doesn't matter for a lot of your common vegetables and annuals, it really doesn't. Then place the tray with your plastic, whatever, this has a cover, on the heat mat, top of the refrigerator, heating pad, whatever it is, and watch for germination, and remember to water. They may dry out depending on the location of them. This was in the basement for me quite a few years back, and it's cool down there, so I wouldn't have to water most of my vegetables and annuals at this point. Not until they germinated. When they yes, there was my plant stand. I actually got that from a friend. Her and her husband made that, but she was moving houses, and she needed to get rid of it. So that's how come I received that plant stand from her. And I eventually passed it on to a fellow master gardener, who I hope is still using it. I don't know. When the seeds germinate, when you see the first leaves, tomatoes do not look like tomato leaves, the first leaves. So we call those seed leaves, the first leaves. The first 2 leaves are the ones that start to look like the plant. So even if you see whatever leaves that may come out when you first set of them, the seedlings will then need more light. They do not need light until they start to germinate. 12 to 16 hours is ideal. Yes, I have mine on a timer. At this point, I've had a timer forever for them. Sometimes I'd leave them on, you know, because it was in the basement at one point, I'd leave them on from 6 in the morning till 10 at night. That's about 16 hours, so we're good. You also, when the seedlings start to germinate, you want to take that plastic off, whatever it is, because then they do not need the extra humidity. They would love it, but you would start cooking your seeds, especially taking the seeds off those, whatever your heat source is, because then you're cooking the seeds. You're warming them before they germinate, and afterwards you're actually cooking them. So they really want to be off that. And it's okay. It's all good. Yeah, I want to mention the dampening off problem. It's not your fault. I will say it's not your fault for the dampening off. A lot of times it's just a soil-borne disease. So you really want to use a purchased potting soil or seed starting mix. Because if you're using your own garden soil, there's too much bacteria. If you're digging it from your yard, there's too much bacteria in there. Yes, I know a person that actually killed the bacteria, and we're not going to get into how you can do that. Because you actually have to bake it in your oven in order to get it hot enough. So yes,
Yeah.
that could be a smell.
Yeah.
So no, I've never done that, and I will never do that. I will just buy fresh soil. Occasionally it does happen. It might be old soil, it might be just something that they didn't notice when they bagged it up. Just discard all those plants and start again. One day the plant's gonna look very healthy, and the next day you're gonna see, you know, something that looked like they ate the bottom of your plant. And it's just gonna die really fast. For me at this point, you know, I've had to knock on the wood. Hasn't happened in a long time, but it can. So once the first true leaves develop, so on the left you see those first leaves are these long, elongated things right here. Those, you know, that's when you would take the cover off and put them under lights. Once you start to see the first true leaves develop, usually at the second, when I see the second set of true leaves develop, so that's a tomato. There's two types of tomato seeds. Tomato leaves, I should say. There's the potato leaf ones, so a lot of our heirloom varieties have potato leaf, tomato leaves. Yeah, that's confusing. And then what we think of tomato leaves are these, right? A lot of times. But there are two varieties. And that's confusing for some people. And usually the packet will tell you this is going to be a potato leaf. You're like, oh, that's weird. But no, it's just, they're in the same family. So after I get two sets of leaves, then I would transplant. Not until. I just want a plant that's large enough. And sometimes it could take a little while. Those roots are developing underground. You're not seeing that. So sometimes from the seed leaves until the first leaves coming out, it could be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And you're like, is anything happening? Yes, it's happening. It's all underground that you can't see, or in the container. So do not worry, it is happening. They are growing. It's just they've decided that, you know, growing their roots is more important than growing leaves at first. So once you have a plant that is off the heat mat, that you have seedlings, then you're going to have to feed the plant. You're going to have to feed at half the dilution recommended by any plant food you want to use, be it organic or inorganic. Doesn't matter, half. And I would use it every 2 weeks or every time you water that plant, because they do need fertilizer to grow. I say with a soluble. what I do, I'll tell you, and it works. I use an organic granular, and when I replant my seeds, I put the organic granule in. And that's the time I get food. Yeah, sometimes if I notice, you know, if it's in its original pot or if it's original seed size system too long, I will feed it, but rarely. Usually I wait until I transplant. But I will be transplanting continuously. When you're doing 20 or 30 flats, you're transplanting continuously from the end of March until May. Unless you stop in a larger pot. I just don't. Do not use the fish fertilizer in the middle if you're in the house. It smells. The cat will love you. That's about it. Some of the other organic stuff is better in the house. I didn't say that product wasn't good. I'm just saying in the house, fish fertilizer, the cat will love you. So after you get a decent sized plant, 7 to 10 days before planting out, you are going to harden off your plants. You're going to put them in a shadier location. Hopefully, we don't have a lot of wind. Last week when we had that really heavy wind that blew down the trees, that was not a day you want to put out your seedlings, really. They will topple over really quick. So hopefully it's a shady, windless location. Why do you put it in a shady location? Because if you put those plants out that you had under lights or next to a window for the last 6 to 8 weeks or more, and you put them in a sunny location right away, then they would just die. They are not used to that much light and that much sun. So you have to gradually put them in shadier location. You could continue it, you know, every 2 or 3 days or whatever. You could put them in a little bit more light. I put them in a location that gets a lot of light, but it's basically shady. Also, you want the temperatures to be above 50 degrees before hardening off. Why that temperature? Why not 32 degrees? Because the root systems are not strong enough to deal with temperatures close to 32 degrees at that point.
Is that the air temperature or the
Yes.
soil temperature?
Now, the soil temperature should be pretty good at that point when you take them out. Yeah, I don't know what it could be, but yeah, air temperature. If it does get below freezing on a night, you may want to take them in, put them back into a garage, unheated space, where they were. Once things leave my house, I never let them back in until the fall. So I use a sheet. We have a lot of extra old sheets, and I'll just put a sheet over them, and that'll help too. Cotton 10, 20, flats, not happening. So, I'm always watching the temperatures when I put them out. So usually it's beginning of May sometimes, and our temperatures have been pretty good lately. We haven't had too many frosts late in the last few years, thank goodness. Yes, like I said, below 40 degrees. That 40 or 50, it's just those root systems are not strong enough. In the fall, they can take it much better, those 32-degree temperatures a lot of times, because the root systems are stronger. Yes, so, you still may want to cover them if you have a lot of fruit or vegetables on them. But they do a bit better. You then will be able to plant after 7 to 10 days of hardening off. And then you just wait until they grow larger, and then you enjoy whatever you've grown. And first tomato, yeah, it's great. Whatever it is. So, are there any questions that I missed? I hope not.
Folks on Zoom, feel free to unmute.
Why do you think they don't sell heirloom tomatoes locally?
They do sell
Do
heirloom
they?
tomatoes. Yeah, there's Brandywine's a very popular one. That's an heirloom variety. Cherokee purple. Yeah. Some of the box stores may not. You have to go to garden centers to find some of the good ones. varieties, and there's a lot of small nurseries now that are really great to find those things. I just think it's what they have and what they want to grow at this point.
They probably sell out. That'll be the first.
Yes, they will, right. So that's why it's always nice to grow your own, if you can, to find varieties you like. Like for instance, I'll grow Sun Gold is a popular tomato. It's a cherry tomato, yellow flowers, yellow fruit. Sun Gold is really popular, but the problem with Sun Gold tomatoes is they will crack if they have uneven watering. So if we get a drought and things, they do crack. Great tomato. It's a hybrid, but it still tastes really good. So I've transitioned to Sun Sugar, which doesn't crack. So I will grow Sun Sugar outside. Right now I am growing inside. I grow 6 tomatoes a year. In the winter, I grow Sun Gold. And so I get my Sun Gold, but then in the summer I'll have Sun Sugar. Same type of tomato, it's just Sun Gold is one of the parents of it.
Are they indeterminate?
Yes, I always go indeterminate tomatoes.
Do you have to, how do you maintain the growth?
I will cut it back at a certain point. Right now, it's taken a few years, but I have the square cages now, the tomato cages. They're round ones, and I have the square ones now that store really well. But, I bought a few every year, and now I have a whole, a dozen, so that's enough. For me, at this point, I'm not growing more than a dozen tomatoes anymore. The other thing is, they do have dwarf tomatoes, and a lot of the dwarf tomatoes are also indeterminate. You have to watch, you have to read what they tell you, because dwarf tomatoes can either be determinate, semi-determinate, or indeterminate. Most of them are indeterminate at this point, if you really read them. So dwarf tomatoes will get to about 4 feet tall, and that's it. So it kind of looks like a determinate tomato plant, but you'll get tomatoes all year long for that. And there are a lot of varieties online at this point. You're not finding a lot in the stores, unfortunately. They actually do have micro dwarf tomatoes too, which can get anywhere from 1 foot tall to 2 feet tall. They work in a container well. You can actually put 3 in about a 10 or 12 inch container. And I've grown these. My problem is they list them as semi-determinate. I found them very determinate. So I get one crop of about a dozen. You do get a quick crop, so you do get tomatoes faster. But only getting 12 or 15 tomatoes on a tomato plant is not my ideal. I mean, if I was continuously planting, but then I'd be, more and more containers. No, I do plant in the ground too. It's just, for those I would probably put them in a container. So yes, they do have many varieties that they're trying at this point. And I did try what a lot of people recommended as the best, one of the best micro dwarf tomatoes. It just, like I said, I got 15 to 20 tomatoes. That's, after all the effort of growing, you want more. I mean, it's a cherry tomato. Not all dwarf tomatoes or or micro dwarf tomatoes are cherry tomatoes, but you do find a lot. Are there any other questions online?
Anything from people on Zoom?
Yes, I have a question.
Hi, Sarah. Nice blue flowers you have.
Oh, thank you very much. I have been living in Phoenixville for over 40 years, and I never had deer in my yard. I live right on Star Street. I now have a flock of deer that decimated my garden last fall, and I'm a little worried about planting this year for the first time in my life. I don't really have an option of putting up big, huge fences, but I was wondering if you have any just suggestions of something I could try. I have all my seeds for the spring, and I have lights, and I have everything I need, but man, I don't know what to do right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had to put up netting around just my vegetable gardens in order to deter the deer. Also the birds in my area.
All right, you use that black bird netting then?
Yeah, I've used black bird netting.
Okay.
And, I mean, there's also the thicker one that would work pretty well. With deer, you just have to cover, it doesn't even have to be all the way to the ground.
Okay.
You could leave, a little space, foot, 2 feet, doesn't matter, they're not crawling underneath. It's just, so you would have to put some netting around it, and I've done
Yeah.
that in the last few years because of the deer problem in my area too.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a veggie truck which I grow all my greens in, and that has a cover over it, so that's safe. But I was really worried about my little garden that I have, so thank you very much.
Yeah, sometimes, if you can position your container in certain areas, but unfortunately, I've heard of too many people saying that the deer have learned how to, walk up steps.
Jeez.
Yeah, I have a patio and they've actually walked in on my patio and eaten tomatoes off of it, yes. Oh, things I've had in containers, so yes, they've become a lot smarter than they used to be.
Yeah. Do they eat cucumber plants, do you know?
They'll eat anything they can.
Okay,
Especially, think about how much they've eaten in the past 6 months with that drought that we had in the fall and even
Yes.
this winter. They are just looking for anything at this point.
yes, okay, well, thank you very much.
Sorry, I couldn't be a better help. With your a lot of those deer repellents work, but you don't really want to put them near your vegetables,
No, I'll use the bird covering. I have that, so I'll use that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else from people on Zoom or in the room?
Do you recommend a really good seed company or a couple?
Like I said, I like the Pine Tree Garden Seeds just because they don't, they're an online catalog. Just because their prices are good, but you're only getting 10 to 20 seeds. The most expensive seed, I don't even know what it is. Usually I'm paying anywhere from $2 to $3.50 for a packet, which is a lot better than some other companies, online companies. But, no, wait, just 1 second, I'll get to you. But, you can get some good deals sometimes at your dollar stores. I don't know if you have ocean-shaped job lots around here, because they're selling, Burton seeds. I know in Pottstown they're supposed to be, but, I know there's one by me and there's one in Pottstown. I'm not sure where all the locations are. They're supposed to be selling Burton seeds for 30 to 50% off.
One of
retail
the
price.
Zoom people says, I checked Pine Tree and they have a sale for February orders.
Yes, they said no shipping fee or something like that, I can't remember, yes. They're fun. It's just because they offer smaller quantities, that's my purpose. So what was your question?
2 questions. First of all, if you start your seeds hydroponically,
Okay,
does the same dates apply to transplanting them and hardening them off? If you happen to go from hydroponic to dirt? That was question 1.
okay. Yes, the days would still be the same. It's still gonna take the same amount of time for the water to get in. You would just wanna transplant them quicker so that they don't get adapted to the water. You see the same thing with houseplants. If you ever, I know it's not recommended all the time, but if you, put a cutting of a houseplant in water and it roots, and if you leave it there for 2 months, and you try to put it in soil, sometimes it doesn't do well. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, depending on the houseplant. So the same thing would apply with seeds. Once you get germination, I would really encourage you to put it into soil as quick as possible.
Okay, the second question I had is cutting down. For example, if you have lettuces or things like that, greens,
Yes.
if you mow them down or, keep them short, does it stop them from bolting? Like spinach.
I know. Not really. They just don't really, no. We'll just go with no. You'll stop the bolting for a little while, but eventually they'll just start to look really sad in the heat and they will want to bolt. It's just, they always want to set seed. Most seeds that you grow, annuals, vegetables, their basic purpose is to, start from seed, grow, flower, fruit, and then set seed. That's their whole purpose, because they want to get more seeds out there, so, they will bolt. It just might prolong it by a week, two, whatever.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
If not, thank you,
Yeah.
Susan. Thank you, Penn State Extension, for the program tonight,
Well,
too.
Thank you.
Also, yes,
All right.
you're welcome.
Thanks, everyone, for coming out
Coming here.
and zooming in.
Very much.
Take care.
Exciting.
Good luck.